Welcome to another episode of Muslims and Mental Health. Today we're continuing with part 2, a conversation with Sister Noha and Sister Munira on positive parenting in the Muslim home. I'd like to just reintroduce briefly Sister Munira Ezzeldine and Sister Noha al-Shikari. So let's begin. I'm going to ask you to just briefly say something about yourself that people didn't get from the first episode.
I'm a professional counselor. I work with adolescents. I do college and career counseling and premarital counseling. I love young adults. I think they're really interesting human beings. And so part of the journey that Noha and I have been on is writing this book and kind of synthesizing our experiences, our life into this book.
Licensed marriage and family therapist in private practice in Newport Beach, California. Alhamdulillah, I had been practicing for now 10 years. Can you believe this? This year. Mashallah. 10 years, alhamdulillah, mashallah, alhamdulillah. And it's such a sacred thing to do, to be with the clients and see the growth that they go through. It's just really such an honor.
You know, it occurred to me to ask because it is such a rarity, and I think that I'm going to get a positive answer here. But do either of you do bilingual therapy? Like, do you?
I do.
Yeah. And you offer therapy in what languages?
So I am fluent in both Arabic and English. Yeah, alhamdulillah.
This is really good to know because that resource is very rare.
Yes, alhamdulillah, alhamdulillah.
So let's continue. Where we left off before, we were talking about the book in terms of where it discusses the child development and the different stages. And I wanted to look a little bit more in depth with that and ask you, particularly, because I don't think it gets emphasized enough, that 0 to 5 years. What could you offer to parents about how critical that stage is or not? You know, what would you like to say?
Okay, so this is actually a very excellent question. Okay, so Munira and I started, I'm going to share the story about the saying.
Okay.
Yeah. So we went through so many different, changes to this book. One of them was we decided that we're going to follow the saying by, we think it's Ali ibn Abi Talib radiallahu an, Imam Ali, where he says that play with your children 7 years and then, discipline them 7 and then, 7.
Right.
Yeah. So this is a famous saying, and a lot of speakers, when they talk about parenting, they actually use it. So we began with that, right? We began that we're going to use it and divide those developmental stages according to that, like 7, 7, 7. What happened is at some point, we felt that actually the message of play with your children the first 7 years is going to send the wrong message. And so Munira and I decided we're not going to divide the developmental stages according to the 7-7. We kept the saying, though, in the beginning of the book until Jane Nelson read it. She was reading the book and she's like, Noha and Munira, I am worried about this saying. And that's when we took it out.
And could you tell us who she is?
Oh, excellent. Yes. Munira?
So Dr. Jane Nelson is the pioneer of positive discipline, and she's written numerous books, and she's really the one who...
She's the founder.
Yeah, the founder. She's the one who conceptualized positive discipline from Adlerian psychology. And so we were honored that she read our book, encouraged us to write this book from, the framework of the Muslim home. And so this hadith or this saying, why it became problematic, well, play is important, right? It is important within the first 5 years. Our kids should be playing, or first 7 years, right? They should be playing, right? But it's not the only thing they should be doing, right? So the discipline piece and the routines and so much foundational stuff is happening in those first, 5 to 7 years that we felt by not addressing that, you almost miss it because, just like you mentioned, like, those first few years, you are setting the tone, right? And you're setting so much in place that can, inshallah, help you in the later years to have things in place that parenting actually becomes a little bit easier, right? A little bit more, in alignment with, this positive parenting philosophy. So that's where we had to make that shift because we didn't want to send that message of it's just play, let them do whatever they want. You don't really have to discipline because that's not what positive parenting is about. And I really think even the spirit of that
hadith.
Of that hadith, that saying.
That's not hadith.
It's a saying.
It's a saying.
So the spirit of that saying, though, the spirit of play, yes, connect, because that's how I see it. Is through play we do connect, right? A child connects, but there is the layers that we also need to not neglect with that.
So I use that one as well a lot myself, and I think that I think what I hear you saying, and it's really important for us in general, whenever we're talking about hadith or sayings or anything, is that you guys are providing more of a context. Because anyone can take something out by itself and say, this says this, right? And without any context around it, and then misapply it because they don't really understand it. Right. And so what I hear you guys saying and what you're doing is you're filling in the outline. So the outline is play, but what does that mean? Right. And it's more concrete, like, well, it's not just like we roll around on the floor together. Right. There's more to it, or letting your kids climb on you when you're making salat, like that's right. There's more to it than that. And so I hear you guys filling in those blanks. So let's fill in some of the blanks. And I think that you hit on it perfectly, that with the 777 rule, if you will, it assumed a lot in terms of what people understood about life. And our life has shifted. I mean, in America now we talk about children not being fully developed until maybe 2021 now, sometimes 23 I've heard, which was not the reality back then. By then, some people were dying. I mean, so it's a whole different trajectory. Right. Still, though, it has its points where maybe we need to reevaluate how we have allowed the lack of maturity to happen so late, right? But that's a whole other conversation.
But that's what positive parenting actually does, because it does invite the parents to really understand that the child, even from the moment of birth, is actually doing something,
right?
Impacting you as a parent, impacting the environment, and not to see the child as just this undifferentiated glob of tissues that we have 100% control over. And to learn how to really deal with the child in a respectful manner. So, yeah.
Well, and this is why I feel that this authoritative style of parenting is 100% in alignment with Islamic, the Islamic spirit of parenting. Like really, when we talk about what is the spirit of Islamic parenting, it is that relationship, it is that teaching and that connecting and that, being, this mentor, this guide. It isn't just about doing unto this child, right? That's not what Islamically, how it's set up for us to engage with this child. They're an amana, right? They're a trust. They're given to us to be able to, to take care of, to guide, to not to use as like, an object or to our agenda.
I'm so glad that you brought that up, because I often find that most parents in our modern time are not aware that, for example, when the baby is born, that the mother and the child does not see themselves as separate from the mother for the first 2 years, right? And so I'm going back again to the 0 to 5.
No, because that's such a critical stage.
And we now see so many kids being put into childcare so early. And I think if mothers knew that, I just think they don't know. And also there is that financial aspect to things, but that they're not aware of that, right?
Or being distracted by the social norms, which is, I mean, unfortunately, there's a lot of pressure on Muslim women right now to actualize through career and through being out there and being visible, okay? And we're, as you said, we're marginalizing the significance of being home with the children. And I'll admit very clearly, I'm very biased, okay? I am very biased to having children being raised by one of the parents, me personally. So I'm acknowledging my bias from the beginning, but I because I see the difference. And I'm not talking about being at home with the children and not engaging with them, because we have those parents too. No, I'm talking about being actively participating and engaged in the relationship.
Like you said, anchoring the family, and that we've kind of lost that. We've lost who is the anchor, because everybody's doing something, but the family and the kids have become kind of last priority.
So just quickly, because I want to move on, if you could, if there's any highlights you want to sort of give about the developmental stages before we move on to the next question that I wanted to.
So I mean, like you were asking the 0 to 5, right? So this is where we talk about routines. This is where we talk, routines with eating, sleeping, the day schedule. Talking about temper tantrums, talking about play, talking about what are the topics 0 to 5?
I mean, I'll be, my daughter-in-law, she has now, she has a 1-year-old now. So she's going back to the book and reading. And so she picked up from the book the idea that children at that stage, they're learning from play, right? And so she put more emphasis on play now just because she understood this concept. And she's okay with it. She's not feeling that it's kind of like a waste of time.
Right, because right now, modern families are all about, let's teach them. They need to be learning, right? Or they need to be listening to, baby Einstein or things like that. So it's kind of shifting that, where it's like they're already learning, being in your presence, being with you, walking into the grocery store and pointing out, things that they see in the aisles. That's learning. That's all.
Sensory experience.
The sensory experience, the everyday experience, the social and emotional. It's all connected. And so that's why so much is happening from the 0 to 5.
The other thing that we're also experiencing right now is that he's not verbal yet, right? So he does a lot of crying when he wants something. And so she picked up also from the book the idea that emotional regulation starts early, because I think at the age of 6 or 7 months, so he'd cry the fake cry, and my son and her, they think it's cute and they're laughing and so on. And I said, Habibti, I think it's important for you to recognize that if he picks up that this is funny, then he's going to continue to actually do it, and then we end up with the tantrums of the 2 years old. And for her, it was like, oh my God, that's so true. So now what she does is, when he cries, she goes and she says, okay, you're very upset, you're angry, it's okay for you to be angry and upset and frustrated. There are things you're not going to get. You see, so this is
the limit setting has
limit
begun.
setting. So this happens early. He's only 1 year old and he's not verbal. But mashallah, she's
it's training yourself
this is
too.
a lifelong lesson.
Yes.
yes.
And,
I love what she's doing with him.
Yeah.
And I tell her every single time I see them, and I say, Habibti Maryam, mashallah, 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 the attachment is really nice. And it just, my heart melts when I see it. And I want to see this happening for all children, because it's such a precious and sacred gift that we can give our children. And those moments are not going to last. They're going to grow up and they're going to leave the house, and then we're going to go, where did the years go?
Well, thank you for that. I have to take a short break for our sponsors, but then we'll return to continue this conversation. So at this point, we're going to take a short break for our sponsors, and we'll be right back with some more questions for Sister Munira and Sister Noha. Thank you. welcome back to Muslims and Mental Health. We're going to continue on with Sister Noha and Sister Munira. And let's jump right back into the stages again, just briefly, about, beyond age 5 and through the teen years and what you have to share.
So what we intentionally did this in the book because we felt like, if you have a toddler, you're going to be really interested in that 0 to 5 section, right? And then if you have a school-age child, the 6 to 12, we have a whole section there, talking about things that are really salient at that time, like, separation anxiety or homework battles or friends and how they interact with friends.
And
technology, right? So these are all the issues that, of course, we hear, the challenges we hear that families bring up at that stage. Then we have a section on specifically teens. So that 13 to, 18, 19 years old. And there we really address a ton of modern day challenges, everything from sex and sexuality to drugs to
mental health,
mental health concerns, really everything that does start coming up, and identity, right? How a teen is developing their identity and what that looks like. So parents really have an awareness, and that's why the developmental piece is important, because we need to know what's normal, right? What is happening, right, as we go through this developmental life cycle. So that's why understanding your teen as this is just normal, this is part of growing up. And then the last section, we have adult children. What does that relationship look like when you have an adult child, and how the letting go and the talking about marriage, talking about careers, talking about identity. So so it gives a framework for parents to really understand their child through the stages and understand that we need to move with them, right? We need to grow with them.
That's great, and I'm hoping maybe we can have you both or one of you back at different times. We will be breaking out developmental stages in other episodes. We have done, in the first year of our show, we did one on 0 to 5. But we're planning to do a series, so inshallah we'll have you back, hopefully, if you want. So who can benefit from the positive parenting?
Everyone. Yeah. I believe everyone. I mean, like we said, it starts from when they're born, and I half jokingly say, even with our spouses, right? Even in all of our relationships, we can use positive parenting. I mean, it's a relational tool. It's how we can be more present, it's how we can be more connected to the people that matter to us. So I really believe it's for everyone.
That sounds great. And what do you think are the next steps for our community in using this method and learning about it, implementing it? What would you advise?
Definitely, I would love to see our communities doing more parenting classes. Love to see that happening on a more regular basis. I would love to see our parents themselves as individuals becoming more conscious and actually picking up a book, not necessarily our book, read any other book, but within a good parenting philosophy, and apply. And I think we're in our masajid, we're not doing enough in terms of prevention. We're addressing problems. I mean, masajid
it's more reactive.
Yeah. They love to have a panel discussing problems and so on. Okay, how about if we put the same amount of energy into prevention by doing the classes? Okay, right? How about even within our organizations as an American Muslim community, right? I remember, and I'm not going to mention the name of the organization, I sent an application to present to that organization about parenting because I see it as preventative, right? They didn't accept the application, which is fine. But what do they cover in their conference or workshops or so on? All of it is reactive.
Yeah.
So when are we going to shift? Not even, as even mental health organizations, we need to shift in our thinking into prevention. Yeah. And I see parenting as so essential, so foundational, so critical, and we're not giving it enough time.
Yeah, the desire is there, though. I think when it's like there's such a drought that when we give it, the preventive part, I'm saying, in my experience, people just stay. They just don't want to leave because they've been so desiring it. It's just somehow it's not between the structural, the organizational level and the on the ground level. There's a disconnect.
Right. The other thing, though, I see is that when we do preventative work, sometimes people are so used to an immediate response or an immediate, change.
Excellent.
And it becomes really, it requires this faith that these baby steps that we're taking, right, and that we're making intentionally are going to lead to these, this long-term view. And I think that's the other issue, is that there's almost this lack of faith that, is it really going to work? Right. Is this really something I'm going to invest in it? And so I remind parents that, it is a lot of work. Like parenting and investing and reading and, becoming better and shifting, it is a lot of work. And there isn't immediate results sometimes. There are some, but it's not always an immediate result.
I feel like we could start a whole nother topic there, because the value of human life it's so valuable. And I think that people have seen just having children, it's almost like the Quran talks about, how many children you have. We've reached that place where it's like, check, have my child check, not that this is a human life that I'm responsible for. But on that note, so where can we get this wonderful book? Like, where can people access it?
Say that it's available on Amazon.com, BarnesandNoble.com, and that we also have a Facebook page. And then also internationally, for our Middle East viewers, we also are available on Gemaloon.com and ebook on Kobo.com.
Fantastic.
So all over the world.
So now we've come to the part of our episode where we like to ask the fun questions.
I'm excited. Yeah.
Sister Noha.
Yeah.
And ask you, who is your favorite Muslim hero and why?
Okay, so this is a very good question, interesting question. When I went through school in Saudi Arabia, right? So a lot of people, even Muslims, think of Saudi Arabia as this oppressive, depressive society. This is not my experience with Saudi Arabia. I want to tell people that in 6th grade, our literary text, if you will, was actually the story of Nusayba bint Ka'b. So she is my hero. I think it had to do because we had to study her for a whole year in 6th grade. And basically in her story, I see the example of what Muslim women are and can be. So she lived at the time of the Prophet ﷺ. She was one of the few women who actually did the pledge during the bay'ah, which to me is political participation. It's voting, if you will. She participated actively in battles, fighting. She was protecting the Prophet ﷺ during the Battle of Uhud. She also, when her son was killed at the hands of Musaylim al-Kazzab, she went in battle at the age of 60. To fight the person who, or the army of the person who killed her son. And her hand was actually cut in that battle. What I take from her...
60. At age 60.
At age 60. What I take from her is basically what not too many people talk about, which is the role of women at the time of the Prophet ﷺ. Women were not isolated. They were not marginalized. They were an integral part of the community. The Prophet ﷺ did not frown on her when she was in front of him, protecting him during Uhud. And all she wanted during that time is for him to pray that she and her family will be with him in Jannah. You would hear some of the scholars talk about women in Islam, and then you would expect, if that was true, that the Prophet would say, how can you be standing next to me, fighting in front of me? So to me, Nusayba bint Ka'b is a real life example of a non-celebrity, because we also live in a culture of celebrity right now, right? She's a non-celebrity. She's your average Muslim woman, and she contributed, and she was active. So that's my hero.
And what is your favorite Islamic concept and why?
My favorite Islamic concept is no soul is beholden for the sin of another. Because I feel it's so important in our relationships. We as Muslims in general, we tend to have an over sense of responsibility towards others in our life, whether in our family, in our communities, and we feel like, oh, we have to change this for them, and we have to fix this. And I'm like, yes, you need to do your part, but ultimately it's on everybody on their own what they do, the consequences of their actions. So this in وَلَا تَزِرُ وَازِرَةٌ وِزْرَ أُخْرَى is mentioned 5 times in the Quran. So it's like a very critical, crucial concept that we lose sight of.
Yeah. I often tell my students that I'd rather be the guide on the side than the sage on the stage.
Nice,
You know, so
nice.
it's similar to what you're talking about, because we are here to help each other but not dominate each other, which too often we see.
Especially in parenting. And again, I'm going to emphasize that as Muslim parents, because we love our children so much, some of us erroneously believe we need to dominate the children because we want what is best for them. But in that dominion, if you will, or control, we lose them. And some kids, in reaction to that control, then they choose to distance themselves from Islam.
Yeah.
So it's a losing battle. Yeah.
So what is your favorite word and why?
Favorite word is tawfiq,
Tawfiq.
because we use
Can you
it in
translate that in
Arabic.
English?
So tawfiq is basically guided divine success. And I didn't know until maybe 10 years ago, really, it was very recent, that tawfiq is not about human, it's not about human control. Tawfiq is not about what we as humans do. It's actually about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala being there, your partner, in what you're doing, and giving you or granting you tawfiq in what you're doing. So I love it because it reminds me of humility. It reminds me of, yes, you can do so many things, but if they don't work, it's because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has other, is intending something else for you. He's not granting you tawfiq for this, maybe He's going to grant you tawfiq on something else. So, I love that. So that's why I sign a lot of my emails with bitawfiq. May Allah grant you, anyone who's listening, divine guided success.
Well, tawfiq, inshallah.
Ameen.
Thank you so much for joining me today and discussing this wonderful book. Tawfiq for the book, inshallah. I hope this reaches a lot of people. You have important information here. At this time, we need to conclude the second episode. Please join us again for another episode of Muslims and Mental Health on our adjunctive website at www.nafshealertherapy.wordpress.com. Or if you have any comments, questions, or concerns, please email us at nafshealertherapy@gmail.com. Thank you. Assalamu alaikum.